A Nephilim spider joining the monsoon banquet. She's caught a tiger butterfly. And he is utterly toxic. Butterfly predators need to learn this.
System error. Shutting down.
Walk, don't run. Use the handrails. Walk, don't run. Use the handrails.
Neon Temple simulation reboot in progress. Live stream initiated. Stabilizing environment.
Every video game movie just...
Okay, well, we're live. Well, it's 2026. We're back. How does that make you feel? I know how it makes me feel. Anyway, you should see some changes to the temple calendar coming up. We have more events that are coming in January. I think February's full too. You should see a bit of a pattern happening in the temple calendar. We're trying something new. Check it out. And yeah, if you want to give a talk, you know where to find me or Trey. Welcome back, Tremere. And yeah, welcome back. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Does the temple owe anybody money, or is anybody working on anything cool? No, I didn't think anybody's working on anything cool. Okay, so anyways, ShortRound is talking tonight, and I think that should be exciting. I think even more exciting about ShortRound talking is the artwork that Chris did, mainly because my favorite thing about Judge Dredd is just the perpetual look of disgust that I wish I could emulate. Disgust is a useful tool. Speaking of disgust, FSU walked in. Yeah, also Monday, the Miami Hurricanes are, party's over. The Miami Hurricanes are going to beat the Indiana, whatever the fucks. And, yeah, you can take that one to the bank. If you have a Hard Rock betting app, you should bet on the Miami Hurricanes. I sure did. And, yeah, to any... if
you're over 18.
I guess if you're over 18. I mean, if you're under 18, you should bet, too. I just won't encourage it.
And gamble responsibly.
Don't gamble responsibly. Find Furio's bets on Hard Rock and tail him at all times. He lost his ass last night on Kansas State, so I'm still making fun of him. Yeah, so with that, we will pass it off to ShortRound. Go ShortRound. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, welcome to an intro to Always Obeying the Law, DMCA edition. It's going to be a guide to automated media servers. It's going to be very beginner-friendly, so if you have no experience in this, don't worry. I'm going to take you through kind of the different tools that are used and the process for those tools, what they're used for, explain them. This is going to be posted in the chat after, so feel free to download it and use the links that are at the end. All right, so I'm going to start off with a disclaimer. Obviously, do this at your own risk. Please don't, take anything I have to say. I'm not a lawyer, didn't study law, and, only use this with non-copyrighted media and Linux ISOs. So, all right, let's start off with who am I? Hi, I'm ShortRound, Liam, and I go ahead and I lead the meetup here, the Hack the Box meetup at Neon Temple. And I have about 2 years of experience in cybersecurity as work, and I have about 5 years running automated media servers, specifically with the kind that we're going to go over tonight. Let's get into why I care about this and why I think you guys should as well. The first one being you get a freedom from the subscriptions that kind of plague our lives. Now everything's a subscription. You have to pay for Netflix, and even when you pay for Netflix, you have ads. You have to pay for Prime, for Hulu. It's getting a little ridiculous, and at the end of the day, when you pay for things, you're not owning them. You're buying the license to them. You don't get to take that media. You can't download it. If the internet goes out, you're out of luck. And that's not great. And I think that's really not consumer friendly, and it kind of works against you. So this kind of gives you an opportunity to take a break from that and to move forward with your life, in that kind of manner. The other thing, this gives you hands-on experience using API integrations and container orchestration, which great, good opportunity to have useful experience, something you can use in your everyday life that provides value to you and your family. That kind of gives you some experience that you can also put on your resume and then kind of market yourself in that direction. Let's get into an overview. So this is kind of an overview of what we'll be talking about today. I'm presenting two different options here. There's a hybrid kind of cloud setup of this, which is more friendly for people who don't really have the resources to front this kind of stuff. Especially if you're storing your own media, it can go up to a few terabytes, that you're going to have on hand. The RAM can get expensive, especially now. So if you don't have it, definitely maybe look towards the cloud option. There is a fully on-premises option, though, where, from start to finish, the whole process, you have it hosted, except for where you're pulling the torrents from. So everything's hosted, and we'll go ahead and get into this more and kind of the pros and cons of each one. But just kind of a starter is that pros for the on-premises version is you have control over every aspect of the infrastructure. Do you want this to have 2 gigs allocated to it? Do you want, maybe you want a certain, only 1080p different types of movies and shows. Maybe you only want 4K. Well, you have the option with that kind of setup. The hybrid cloud one, like I said, you don't need as much resources. If you go with the kind of cloud setup of this, you could probably do this all off of a Raspberry Pi or a Zima board, depending on what kind of specs you have on those. So you can go really light infrastructure or kind of heavy into it and have a little bit more control over that. All right, we're going to deep dive into the fully self-hosted version. For the back end, we have Radar, Sonar, Qubit Torrent, and Prowler. The front end being either Plex or Jellyfin, and Jellyseer or Overseer. And then access kind of narrowing down to, and this is for access outside of your network, of course. If it's in your network, you don't need these things, but WireGuard and Cloudflare. And I'm going to go ahead and take a deep dive, starting with the back end. first thing to set up, Qubit torrent. So Qubit torrent is a way to download these torrents and kind of get them indexed and pull them from their indexers, right? So it gives you automated ratio rules, so that way you can set when it needs to seed, how much it needs to seed. It also allows you to go ahead and set up a VPN. I kind of have it blocked out here, but this, yes, question?
What does it mean to seed?
So seeding, essentially, whenever you're torrenting any media, right? Kind of the advantage to that is you download it, but you're also giving out a portion of that for other people who are looking to download it. It's kind of a simple explanation of seeding. So if you download something for 5 gigs, say you may seed 500 megs of that for somebody else who's looking to download it. They'll pull from your copy that you have downloaded. You know, a lot in the torrenting community, seeding is turned off. You have the option to set it off here. You can set it to stop the torrent as soon as it's done downloading. Yeah, it's kind of a dick move.
Yeah.
Kind of a dick move, but you can if you really don't want to seed. Yeah.
Why is it a dick move? What's the culture around seeding?
So the culture around seeding is very much kind of like, you know, you take time to give a little bit. You know, you people has seed for you to be able to download the thing, and you're kind of being a little bit of an asshole if you go, you know, fuck you guys, I'm gonna just keep my copy now that I've taken from all of you. Yeah, you're being a little bit of a dick, but so that's kind of the culture around it. Is hey, we're helping you out. You gotta give it, you know, give a little to have, kind of idea. Yeah.
Are you more or less likely to get caught by the feds if you seed more than you download?
Yeah. So seeding is caught a lot more. But so is downloading. Kind of, and the main thing isn't really. I wouldn't necessarily worry about feds because typically when you do this, you're going to do it behind a VPN. But if you don't, a lot of the times your ISP will catch you and turn it off. I know I've gotten letters where my internet was shut down, and they said, hey, we detected that you were torrenting, we're going to turn it off. Seeding kind of sucks for your ISP in that manner. It gives a lot of upload traffic, and it's kind of intense for them, so they like to shut you down, especially if they detect that it's copyrighted media. But that's why you kind of lock everything behind a VPN. If it's behind a VPN, you're really not going to get caught by doing this for the most part. You know, of course, you want to lock it. So that kind of pulls into this section, which is you have to set a bind address in Qubit torrent. They don't actually tell you this straight off the bat. Even if you have the container locked, like they put the Docker container behind a VPN, you still have to bind it to that IP. If you don't bind it to that IP, then it can go ahead and if your VPN turns off for some reason, it'll just redirect to your internet normally. So as long as you set a bind address and you make sure you have an always on VPN, you're good 99% of the time. I don't think I've ever been turned off, like my internet never got turned off or caught when it's behind a VPN. It also has a RESTful API, which allows you to integrate it with Prowler, Radar, and Sonar, which we're about to get into. And that actually really does come in handy. It allows those tools to detect when you've torrented something, that you've downloaded, and where the download is, so it goes into sorting. Like I said, we'll get more into that as we get into these next slides. Prowler. So Prowler aggregates multiple indexers simultaneously. This tool is essentially going to be used for your Radar and Sonar server, which get queried by the different movies and shows you want to download. This essentially redirects them to each indexer, searches the indexer for those fields, downloads it. It also takes into any regex that you enable in Radar and Sonar. So if you want only 1080p, only 4K, you can set that. You can say nothing over this file size, just cancel, and it'll go ahead and take that into account while searching multiple different torrents. You're also able to enable something, which I have there, called Flare Solver. That solves CAPTCHAs. So certain indexers require CAPTCHAs. Huge problem when it comes to these automated torrents. Not really a problem if you have Flare Solver. So you're able to kind of pull from a list. Say you even have a private torrent, you can go ahead and set that up in here, and it'll pull from that private torrent. That also gets more into seeding, which is that a lot of private torrents require you to have a specific ratio. They'll say, hey, if you want to be in this, to invite only, you have to seed up to 5 gigs per month or per day. They have a lot of rules around that to keep you in there. But that's kind of an advantage, is that when you're in there, usually downloads go faster. The more seeders you have giving you download, the faster that download can go, essentially. So this allows you to go ahead and log into those private torrents if you have that. It's a single point that can manage the health of each of your tools and indexers, and along with availability. So you're able to actually look into this and then kind of get a statistic of like, oh, when is this index going down? Is there a lot of seeds at 3 in the morning? Is there a lot of seeds at 5 a.m.? You kind of get all that information through Prowler. Really helpful, and like I said, it integrates with radar and sonar, which we are about to get into. It also translates between indexer protocols. So some indexers use different protocols. I added some here, TorsNab and NewsNab. So it can make incompatible sources work together. It transfers that query that you get from radar and sonar into like an indexer readable, search. Okay, radar. Radar is used for specifically querying and searching movies from Prowler. So this works a lot as well as it can monitor for new movies that come out. I know Now You See Me, the newest one came out recently. If I want to go ahead and query for the whole show, I can do that, and it'll save that query until Now You See Me comes out. Maybe you only want the Blu-ray torrented version of it. Well, you can go ahead and say, I want the Blu-ray torrented version of this, and it'll specifically wait until it can detect that version from Prowler to pull that movie. Same thing with 4K, 1080p. You can set all those different options in here, all the different regex that are needed. And all of that would be, of course, used with radar. You can also have automated search orchestration. So if you really want, you can tell it a similar show. Say you like Friends. Well, The Office and Friends, if those were similar, it can go ahead and recommend you The Office, and you can pull that entire show. It also, that's not with radar, but with movies that are similar together, something along those lines. You can also upgrade your entire library through here. So if you pull everything in 1080p and then you realize, oh, I actually had more storage than I thought, you're actually able to go ahead and force an upgrade it'll re-pull everything you have to a 4K version, something along those lines. It also monitors downloads. So this is the integration with qBittorrent I mentioned earlier. But when qBittorrent downloads something, it's not always in the proper field for Plex to recognize. It's not always in the proper place in your file system for Plex or Jellyfin to recognize. So this can go ahead and move those to a different location in your file system. It can name it the proper thing if it's named incorrectly for those things to identify. And it can kind of orchestrate that whole process going forward. Sonar. So sonar is essentially the same thing as radar, but for shows. And this is where the monitoring of new releases comes really in handy, right? Because then you can actually have it, say a new season of your favorite show comes out, it'll automatically pull that new show when you set it to. I mean, it's great. It has multi-show concurrent air date tracking, so it can track when a show airs. Sometimes things will come out on torrent before it airs, so you can have it set, hey, maybe I only want the version that's going to come out on Hulu. So I'll set to wait until it airs, until we can pull that version. Yes, question?
Can I only get the shitty version of somebody going into the theater and recording it?
Yeah. So, yeah, you can, yeah. And that's actually what I will say is that's kind of the advantageous air date tracking portion of it, which is that, normally if you went to go torrent a movie or go to a piracy, website, and the movie's not out yet, or maybe it's just out in theaters but it hasn't come out on a digital platform, that's what you're going to see a lot is somebody holding up their phone, somebody walks across the screen, all that stuff. Yeah. So, like, this kind of helps prohibit that by waiting until the media comes out. Is when the media is out on digital, that's when you're actually, you have everyone who scrapes it off of the website, off of Hulu, Netflix, Prime, and then just uploads it, or if it comes out on Blu-ray. And so you actually avoid a lot of those shitty streams by doing something like this and having it track.
Yeah, but that has a certain charm.
I mean, yeah, if you want to watch it that way, you can set, to only get those versions of things.
They've always had too much energy drinks. They're always wanting like this.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah, you can set it to do that. All right, Overseer and Jellyseer. These are essentially the same product. That's why I have them on the same slide. Jellyseers for Jellyfin, Overseers for Plex. I'll get into the difference between those two more as we go on. But they're basically a front-end, really easy GUI for your users, right? If it was just you using this service, this may be something you might be able to skip out on. You can go ahead and query those yourself through your radar server, through your sonar server. But this makes it super easy for people who are non-tech savvy, right? You want to give this to your mom, you want to give it to your dad, you want to give it to your brother, sister, and maybe they're not into tech as much as you. Well, this would be something that you'd push out through WireGuard or Cloudflare. Yes?
Have you made your grandma pirate shit before?
So I actually, yeah, I have.
Don't answer that on fucking camera later.
No, not pirate. It's all non-copyrighted media. But yeah, I mean, I pushed this out to my family. It's really easy for people to get in, log in with their user account. It's going to be the same user account they use to watch that streamed media. And they can just go ahead and hit request. And it sends it off to Radar or Sonar, depending if it's a movie or show. And it will handle all of the, 4K, if you want to get all the seasons or just season 2, just season 1. It'll handle that. The whole process from a really easy GUI. You got user management. It syncs with your Plex and Jellyfin server. So, if you have to look at all that stuff, it's the same user and password. Really easy to see, and really easy to request stuff. You can also set up multi-channel notifications. So you can set the parameters by which a notification happens. Maybe it's when somebody requests things. Maybe it's when things get approved, right? But it'll go ahead and send you a notification. If you want Discord, Telegram, NTFY, email, you can even set it to a webhook and do a webhook integration with it. It's really great all around for what you want, especially when it comes to users and maybe user issues. A large portion of that comes down to just usability. Like, I use this myself when I go to request things. I don't go to the back-end version because I think this looks nicer, easier to see, and I like that personally. Comes down to what you want and what the people who are going to be using what you have want. But yeah, that's a lot of it with overseers. Yes.
Say your user is not really technically, like you said, gifted. What method would you use for if they were using like a Roku or something? Like that would be more simple.
So. Yes, it does. So this would be a separate site to Plex and Jellyseer. However, you can still set this up even if your users can't access this, because if the user is detected in this system and the other system you have, Plex or Jellyfin, adding something to their watch list, they can request. It'll query a request for it on here. So, for example, if your user doesn't even have a phone for some reason, to look this up, right? They would be able to add it to their watch list or wanted list, favorite list, depending on what platform you're using. Yeah, watch list. Yeah, favorite list. And it'll go ahead and auto query for that movie or show for your user. So it's great to even set it up, maybe without actually having your users get into this, just so it can do that feature automatically for you, which Radar and Sonar don't have the native capability for. Let's go to the next slide. So Plex and Jellyfin. This is going to be the meat and potatoes of kind of the front end section. This is what your user is going to interact with. This slide is going to be going over the similarities of it, because there is a lot of differences, and I will get into those. But they are both used for metadata aggregation. It can go ahead and pull from IMDb and add the different actors that are in this movie or show. Maybe the different seasons it has, when the next season is going to release. Does have multi-user authentication and access permissions. So say you add someone to it that's a kid. You add your kid to that. I don't want my kid to be able to watch all the movies and shows. I want to, maybe not have them not watch Deadpool. Okay, well, I can set up a specific, parental control kind of group to that user and have it so they don't really have to see all that stuff. It's not even an option for them. So that's a great portion of it. It also allows for hardware acceleration and transcoding. Kind of the great feature about that is your different users are going to be using devices that don't have all the codecs to watch these films, right? If something's downloaded in the .avf format, not everyone's going to have capability, especially if you are watching off of like a Roku or a Vizio, something along those lines. It's not going to have the capability to translate that kind of codecs into a watchable format. So if you have a GPU on your server that this is running off of, it's a great thinking to just enable hardware transcoding and have your GPU do the work for them. It's pretty simple. It makes it so every different kind of device would be able to watch that. It also just allows you to view the media. Yes, go on.
How granular is the control for the child protection? Like, if I don't want to have Coco Melon going on.
So the control in general is pretty granular. But the thing is, parental controls specifically is like a different section than just user controls. So if you really wanted, you can combine the two. You can set it so this user can only see this group of movies or this tag associated with movies, and then you just tag the movies you want. With the parental control, that's when you get into like the watch time. You can have it so they have X amount of watch time with movies and then a different amount of watch time with shows, or the same watch time for both. And then what kind of parental control are you saying? I don't want, I'm allowing my 13-year-old to watch more movies than maybe my 5-year-old would. So maybe I want my 13-year-old on PG-13 and then my 5-year-old on, I guess, yeah, CoComelon, something like that, where you'd want the difference, yeah. So, I mean, it's great in that manner. You can also, like I said, there's different groupings. So I can just make a group for users and then change what that group has the ability to access. And then the screen time that group can have for maybe the parental controls don't really get what I want. You can still get into like the group and actual user permissions when it gets into that.
And you can make your own tags to say like, this is
Mhm.
okay, this is not.
Yeah, you add, you're able to add like a group for movies, and then that just becomes a tag that when a movie gets in, you click it, you hit add to group, and it adds it to group, and all your other users who don't have access to that group can't see that it's in the group. Role-based access control, correct, yeah. I didn't want to get into the buzzwords, but yeah. So here's kind of the differences. So Plex is great. They have a lot of their core features as free. However, all the premium features, something like hardware transcoding, is locked behind a paywall. Go ahead.
What does that mean, hardware transcoding?
So hardware transcoding is when your GPU does the translation for the type of format the movie is in into a human watchable format, or a format for that device to be able to pull and stream it from.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to the kind it's it's the kind it is downloaded from the torrent. So some of them download as a .avf format, and obviously most devices aren't going to be able to watch something out of a .avf. But you know, if you have something like hardware transcoding enabled, your GPU will automatically transcode that into a readable for that device, something like a .mp4, that most devices would be able to watch. So yeah, a lot of the core features not core features, a lot of the extra features for Plex are locked behind Plex Pass, which is usually about $5 a month or $120 for lifetime. I'm not a huge fan of that, but some people are. And kind of the advantage to that when it comes to Plex is because it is a paid-for thing, you're going to see it's used pretty much everywhere. Vizio is a great example. If you have a Vizio TV, I do, Plex is, Jellyfin is not natively on there, but Plex is. I can go and download Plex on my Vizio TV. I can download it on Roku. I can download it basically anywhere because they're paid for. So a lot of their services, you know, people have invested money into. So they of course make it more available, more polished, easier to use in some cases. It's a lot easier of a thing to get into, get started, and you can do a lot with it. But of course, when you pay. Jellyfin, on the other hand, is completely free and open source, and the idea behind that is it's not going to be on as many things. I know, like I said, for Vizio, it's not even on there. It is on Roku. It is on a lot of different things, but the experience with it is more janky. When it goes on to Roku, it operates okay. You know, it operates needs meets, but I wouldn't say it's anything extra. It doesn't feel extra. It doesn't look extra. It just gets the job done. But, I mean, that comes with a lot of customization they're able to do. You're able to rewrite the front end in CSS for Jellyfin. I have on my server, and it's able to look completely different. You are able to make things easier. It's fully customizable if you put in the effort for it. It's definitely not as beginner friendly. I know they have been working towards that. A lot of their like getting started guides are geared towards beginners. But when you really get into the extra features, it starts to move away from becoming beginner friendly and go into something a little bit more in depth, a little bit more in detail for people who know what they're doing. That being said, Plex is able to see your media. Even when you pay for Plex Pass, they can look at your stuff. I know most of the times they don't. I have friends who use Plex only, and they've never had any issues, but they do have the ability to, and that means the police, if they really wanted to, could get it. They can query Plex for it, and they can get that information. Jellyfin, you can't. Well, at least as it can be as secure as your device is secure, basically. So, you know, it's kind of a give and take. Both of these are going to get the job done. It's just how much time do you really want to invest in it? How complicated or customized do you want your things to be? From a front-end user perspective, who would be using this without knowing what it took to set it up, without attempting to set it up, they are relatively the same. And they can be relatively the same. I've seen cases where Plex is a little bit better because it's just, you know, you tell somebody, hey, download it off the Play Store, download it off of your TV app store, right? Whereas Jellyfin, sometimes, if you want a TV, you may have to sideload it. And you know, Jellyfin requires a server input, whereas in Plex, you can just send somebody a link, they click it, and they're added into that family group. So, yes, question.
Do you know what features are included in the free version of Plex aside, like, what's excluded from the free version aside from hardware transcoding?
Yeah. So some of the, I know at least what's in the free. I don't know everything that's excluded from it because I use mainly Jellyfin. But I know in the core features of Plex, you can still stream your, stream your movies and shows at whatever version, 4K, 1080p. I don't think they lock the bit rate. I think they have some live TV channels too, and it's limited for remote access. They've been really cracking down on that, where you can't remotely access your stuff unless you have Plex Pass. I know that for a fact. But it has the same core features as Jellyfin would, which is that you're able to log on, pretend you're on the same network. You're able to log on, you're able to watch what you need to watch. It's just definitely not as customizable without paying. Hardware transcoding is a big one, remote access being one of them.
There's no remote access, is it basically just the UI for it, not
It pretty much. Well, that's where it gets a little tricky. So if you do pay for Plex Pass, the remote access doesn't actually require WireGuard or Cloudflare or any pushing out. Plex itself will just push it out for you. So you can just tell somebody, again, I can send somebody a link, you can click it, and then you're on my Plex, and I didn't have to like give you a VPN access or anything like that. But then that being said, if you don't pay for it, yeah, I guess it does just turn into, if some users are on your network, it's just a front end, yeah, you can just watch things through it. But like I said, Plex has a little bit more of that polish on it that some people are looking for, I guess. All right, access management. So you don't actually have to go through and do these things if you're only looking for your network. These are if you're trying to get remote access outwards. You also don't have to do them if, like mentioned earlier, if you pay for Plex Pass, because they go ahead and do this portion for you. You just enable remote management in the settings, and it's able to be accessed anywhere. But I want to talk about WireGuard and Cloudflare. Now, WireGuard can also be substituted with something like OpenVPN. Also, if your firewall has a VPN server, you can substitute that in there. This is just general VPNing into your network activity. So one of the benefits, no third party can see your traffic or metadata. You have full control over it. It's encrypted with a VPN. It's completely private. Also, you self-host that, so you get to decide what users are added to that, who can see it. Maybe you want to set some time, like, oh, they can only see it between these hours. You get more control having it, self-hosted as a VPN than you wouldn't. The kind of downside to that is they can have access to your whole network. Like if I just had somebody say you have a firewall that has a VPN, and they VPN in, they now can see your entire network, and that's not great, especially if you have somebody who's willing to play a prank on you, or maybe they get taken over by a malicious actor who would for some reason want to be targeting you. They can log into that VPN, and they can see your entire network. Also, a little bit more difficult to get non-tech savvy people in on. If it might be as easy as asking, oh, give me your phone, and enabling an always-on VPN for WireGuard, and then just telling them not to touch it. Other times, if you're trying to guide them through the process of getting onto it, it's a little bit more difficult. You got to say, okay, I'm going to send you the file, download it. They have to download the either OpenVPN or WireGuard, get it to connect. Tell them, oh, don't touch it, or maybe only turn it on when the show's going. It's a little bit of a process. Kind of Cloudflare. The advantage to this is with tunneling, you don't have to open any ports to your network, and it's really easy for beginners to get into. If I was to set up a Cloudflare tunnel for my domain, this is prerequisite saying you have a domain. They are cheap if you want to go on something like Namecheap and buy $2 a year one. It's super easy to just copy paste a command from Cloudflare, and boom, instantly I have VPN-like access into my network that is only for this one port, only for this device. And it works completely well. It works well with not Plex because they've blocked it, but with Jellyfin. The way you access Jellyfin after installing the app is by connecting to the IP or domain. So you just tell them, hey, here's my domain. Install the app, fucking click it, type it in, you're good. Connects you right in. It does have automatic SSL and TLS certificate management, which is great. Kind of the downside to this is costs money. Frankly, yeah, having a domain costs money. Also, you're giving your metadata and traffic through Cloudflare, which, again, they haven't done anything yet, at least for me personally who's using it, but they can. And if they see your traffic, they feel free to shut that off. Especially sometimes if you're trying to push downloads through Cloudflare, because Plex and Jellyfin both give you the permission to download your media from the app, it will shut it off through Cloudflare. It has a 100 megabyte up and down limit for one packet. So it may just be, this is kind of a preference thing. Again, neither of these are really needed if you're only talking about your own personal media and network. If you're only going to use it yourself, you don't really need any of this. But when you start getting into other users, it becomes complicated, and it really just depends on what kind of thing you're looking for and your users would be willing to use. All right, so kind of wanted to go over the workflow of this. It's going to start with one of the Seer applications. A user goes on there and requests whatever media they want. They can access that through WireGuard or Cloudflare. And then that sends down a request to something like Radar and Sonar, which will query Prowler for that media type of media from the indexers you have set up. And then that'll go back to Sonar and Radar, and it'll download it through qubit torrents, which will then also go back to Radar and Sonar to move it, organize it, set it up with the correct kind of naming scheme, and put it in the correct place in the file system, which then will be read by Jellyfin and Plex via your user. There is kind of a larger resource ask for this, and that's because a lot of it, again, all this you're hosting. So if you're hosting all this on one device, you're going to be looking at something closer that has 4 cores, maybe an i5-8400. I did put an AMD one, AMD Ryzen 5 2600 if you're going for that. If you want a GPU, and again, that's only if you're doing transcoding, you're going to be looking for something around a 1060 or higher. I know the lower ones now, like when you get lower to this, they stop supporting types of transcoding with certain codecs. So you're definitely going to be looking for this or higher when it comes to de-encrypting that. For RAM, it is going to be kind of hefty on RAM. Anywhere from 12 to 16 gigs, I would try to stick with. A lot of this I have kind of a minimum and maximum to, and just about. And that's all going to depend on how you want to host these things. And that's because, especially us being in security, we're looking at the security side of these things. So the more secure you want to get with these applications and put them behind different containers or VMs, the more expensive resource-wise this is going to cost for you. If you're hosting it on Proxmox inside of a VM that has a Docker container, right, that's going to be way more resource-intensive than if you just want to host this on an Ubuntu desktop, right? But it is pretty hostable either way. The storage is 3 to 4 terabytes is usually gonna be good for most people if you're downloading shows, 1080p to 4K, and you got movies. The entirety of Game of Thrones is going to be a couple hundred gigs. So it really depends on what kind of media you want, how much of that media. Storage can range, all the way up to 16 terabytes if that's what you really want. The time to media, how long before you request something, and will that thing be watchable either by you or a different user? Yes.
So what's your internet bandwidth that you hold these numbers with?
So the internet bandwidth does matter. I would say around I would recommend like 230 gigs or more, or not gigs, megabytes a second or more. I have a gig up and down Frontier, so it's easy to just, when I'm seeding, no issues with that. But yeah, I would say you want 230 megabytes or more. Yeah.
So we're talking 10 minutes to 30 from request to availability on a 1 gig pipe?
No, this is on about 500 megabytes a second. And that one I got from my friend, because I personally don't have this set up. I have the hybrid cloud version set up, which is actually much faster, but not because of that, for a different reason, which we'll get into. But yeah, 10 minutes to 30 minutes is usually pretty good, because again, Prowler's using multiple different indexes, so you can get pretty good, pretty quick torrents, especially if you're going for like something 1080p or even lower at 720p. You can get it going pretty fast. This is just kind of I would say a median. It does depend, like obviously with Jellyfin and Plex, how often are you going to set those to scan, right? Because they scan on an interval. I think the lowest Jellyfin goes down to is 15 minutes. So that's 15 minutes right off the bat. but the 10 to 30 minutes was kind of an average for if the client is scanning 100% of the time, how quickly would this pop up in the client to watch? And that's kind of where we determined probably 10 to 30 minutes for it to be fully downloaded, moved to the correct spot in your file system, and named correct things.
Now, when you talk about scanning,
Mhm.
does it scan on request, or when you create a request, does it go into queue and then wait until the next scan period, and then scan?
So your request is completely separate from the scanning. Jellyfin and Plex would not know you requested any media at all. They are set to scan on a couple of different variables. One of them is you can schedule a scan every X amount of time, right? 15 minutes, an hour, 12 hours, whatever you want. You can also set it to scan when an action happens. So if it notices that the folder you have set gets updated, then it can run a scan. Personally, I have mine set so it scans every 15 minutes by force through the scheduling, and then anytime it detects a change with the media it already has, it'll scan. So if I delete a movie on there, it'll rerun that scan, and then it'll immediately get rid of that movie, hopefully. Scanning can also take a little bit longer if you have a lot of media in there, if it has to scan a lot more, then obviously. But that's things you can change in the settings. You can say, hey, once you've scanned something, don't rescan it. Or you can say, I want you to rescan the whole folder every time. So that can vary on how long the scan takes, but also how often it happens and what triggers it. But I know definitely when you request things, the actual client that's viewing them will have no idea that you've requested them because they're just two separate clients. So that's kind of the breakdown and workflow that you would have set up for this. So let's get to the hybrid cloud version. This is something I currently use. I think this is the best version right now, and I think it's kind of the modern take on this that kind of moves some of the troubles off of yourself. So let's get into that. Real Debreed and other Debreed services. There are other services that do this. I know off the top of my head there's one called All Debreed, but I've seen other services that do something similar to what I'm about to say. So this one, essentially, it is a paid-for service that will have its own index and automatically torrent things for you. Then you're able to go ahead and download them right off of the website using HTTPS. So this negates you having to use something like qubit torrents or anything to torrent any of your media, because you can throw it into here, it'll go ahead and torrent it for you and download it. Something great with this is it has its own index, but it also doesn't require you to re-download something that has been downloaded by a different user. So say me and Delphi both he downloaded the movie Deadpool, right? And I wanted to download the Deadpool movie. If I went and tried to torrent the Deadpool movie, it would just add it to my account, and I can instantly click the download button and download it because he's already done the work of torrenting it. That's great. And that means you can cut down on a lot of that torrenting time because it'll just instantly register it. So that's amazing. Also, it gets rid of the liability on you. I'm pretty sure this service specifically is hosted in France. I don't know where the other ones are hosted, but you don't have any of the media on your servers. None of this do you have on your servers, and all of it's encrypted with HTTPS, so you don't actually even need a VPN because your ISP cannot detect that you're downloading anything or that anything would be the copyrighted media that we would speak of. Okay, rclone Zerg. So a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with rclone. It is a tool that will mount cloud media as local storage. The Zerg in this is a WebDAV for rclone, and that specific WebDAV hooks into these types of services like All Debreed and Real Debreed through API, and will mount those services as your local storage. So you're able to download an unlimited amount of things on Real Debreed by adding them to your account, and essentially mount that account with rclone to your local storage. That's great. That negates it, so you don't even have to go the extra step of downloading it. It just goes ahead and has it already there. So that's great. You also have chunk-based reading with configurable buffer sizes. So you're able to set how much of this do you want cached. Do you want any of it cached? You don't have to. How do you want this to read? Say you want it to pre-cache every movie you have in there. Well, you can set it so that the movies folder is constantly pre-cached. It gives you a lot of configurability with this, but the main feature that we would be using it in this stack is the fact that you're able to mount these services as your local storage to be readable. Okay, DMM and Sear Bridge, which DMM stands for DeBride Media Manager. It does work for the two services I named already, AltaBreed, RealDeBride. And it uses an API. Sear Bridge specifically is something you can host, that you have to host to do this, but it replaces the need for something like radar, sonar, and Prowler. Using an API through Overseer and JellySeer, and then the API you have for DeBride, it can go ahead and take the query you get from something like Overseer or JellySeer, and it'll query for that movie using RealDeBride's index and add it to your account. That's great. That means that you didn't have to do any of the searching, 1. 2, you've 100% downloaded this movie because somebody else already downloaded it, and it just gets added to your account, and then rclone goes ahead and mounts that. So you've just essentially almost instantly downloaded a movie or show that normally you would have had to torrent, wait for that torrent to download, then get moved into the correct place. Did it all real instantly. It's great. It also allows you to manage when it fails, why it failed, and connect to those different processes in that manner. It also has, as you can see down here, it has its own web view. That's great because, again, if you're setting this up just for yourself and you don't really care about that front end having something like Overseer or JellySeer, you can set this up and just go and download movies straight from here. You can search straight from here, click download. You can even set it so it sorts through just like radar and sonar would, the type of movie, 4K, 1080p. So, I mean, that's great. It eliminates a lot of that hassle you would have to have on yourself. It's also super lightweight because everything's done through web requests, so you don't actually have to maintain that kind of stuff yourself. And that's it. Your only change, yes, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what is the response time for trying to play a movie that's on a cloud-mounted storage?
It's actually not bad. So something with RealDeBride that I forgot to mention was that it allows you to stream straight from RealDeBride. The limit to that is that it's per IP. So you can't have multiple IPs streaming from RealDeBride. But what that does mean is you can actually stream with, the response time I've never had any issues with. It's pretty much I click something and it takes 2 seconds and it opens and watches. But the great thing about that with JellySeer or Plex Jellyfin or Plex is that because they're logging into your server, everything's using the same IP. So you can actually stream from RealDeBride multiple streams because it's all the same IP address. It's registering as one user just watching multiple shows at the same time. So it's pretty quick. I've never had any issues, at least. It does need pretty much an 80 megabyte or faster per second connection, I will say. Specifically for RealDeBride, it's not going to be streaming very well if you don't have that. But I don't think anyone I know hasn't had any real issues with it, and most of the time I don't think you're going to be having any issues with it. But kind of the workflow here is that you go ahead and request something using Overseer, JellySeer, and that goes and requests it from Sear Bridge, which then adds that movie to your DeBride server, which is automatically mounted via rclone. And then, whenever you have your scan happen on Plex and Jellyfin, it goes ahead and scans for that, detects the media, you can watch it. So the time to media is really quick with this. Of course, I've requested something and 1 minute later been able to watch it. Of course, it's going to all depend on when do you have your server set to scan. You can also set different times for rclone to reload and redetect new media. So those that time can vary, but stuff can happen pretty fast with this. You can go from clicking to want to watch something to watching that thing within 2 minutes of each other. It can go pretty quickly, and of course the resources with this is much less. I still do recommend 2 to 4 cores. You can go down on the lower end with this. An i3 would be fine, Ryzen 3 would be fine. I've had people host this on the Raspberry Pi or Zima board and have really no issues because a lot of this stuff is just lightweight, light work. Especially because, like I mentioned, you can stream straight out of RealDeBride, so there's no actual need. You don't have the media on your server, but your server does little to no work unless it's transcoding. It does little to no work on actually showing that output to your users. The GPU, again, optional. Do you want hardware transcoding enabled? Do you not? Do you not care about that? That's going to depend on you. I still do recommend about 12 to 16 gigs of RAM. It is going to be a lot of work, like depending on how many shows you request. You do want to be able to have all this running with no issues. I've seen people have less, seen 8 gigs do fine. That is going to really just depend on you. I think 12 to 16 gigs is a great, marker for you'll have RAM left over at the end of that. Storage. You don't really need much of it because you're mounting from rclone. It gives you kind of an unlimited storage pool to pull from. I have 16 gigs in my Real to Breed server, and I have 50 gigs allocated on Proxmox to the VM. So you really don't need much of it, and it can detect it all from rclone anyway. So it's just how much storage are your Docker containers if you're containerizing it, or if you're not, how much storage are those services going to take up themselves rather than actually having to store your media. It's a great advantage to it. So yeah, and then the time to media, of course, is super low. All right, any questions? Yes.
So with your hybrid model, you don't actually have anything on your machine again, so without internet, you're out of luck.
Yeah, so that is, I guess, one of the downsides of the hybrid model.
Would you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't have the time to get up and put the mic in front of me.
Oh, okay. So the question was, with the hybrid and cloud version, if the internet goes out, you'd be out of luck because, of course, you don't have any of this media stored on your machine. Yeah, no, that's true. And that is kind of a downside to it. Also, those services, they don't cost very much, especially when you compare them to a $16 a month streaming service. I think I pay $3 a month for Real to Breed, and it's in euros. So, but you have to pay for it, and if the internet goes down, you do lose it. It comes with upsides and downsides. That is one of the downsides, and that's why I did include both versions, because it's, what do you value? Would you rather spend the extra resources for that thing if it meant that when the internet went down, you'd still be able to watch your media? Or would you be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to take, the benefits I get, essentially unlimited storage and, not having to have as much hardware, but then you accept the downside that, yeah, if the internet goes down, you're out of luck on that one.
If it's mounted to your drive, can you also just copy it over to your drive?
Damn it.
So,
Could you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So if you mount it to your, you do a cloud mount to your own device, can you then copy over the files that you've mounted to a local storage?
Yeah, you completely can, actually. Okay. You can also just go into Real to Breed and download it straight from there. There is something that I've seen people do when they kind of want a hybrid of those two models, which is use a tool called RDT, Real to Breed Torrenting. And essentially, it uses an API key to monitor Real to Breed. And when something gets added, it just goes ahead and downloads it for you. So if you really wanted to do something like that and still use Real to Breed in a way where you're getting that instant torrent and using their private index, you could completely set something like that up, or you could just have it maybe a script to just copy it over since it's already mounted. The advantage I found with mounting it directly to your drive and not having to copy it over is you can just use less resources. You don't have to have the amount to actually store all those things. But that is a great alternative to what you were saying, which is that you'd still be able to keep some of it out if the internet went down.
Any other questions? ShortRound?
So you prefer just having everything on a cloud instead of having a big brick next to you with all of your information?
Yeah, me
do you
personally.
Use it on multiple TVs or something?
Me personally, I do prefer it, and kind of the thing is I found not only would I not really have the space, like I could go out, I guess I would have to buy some extra hard drives and stuff to store all the media I want. So right now I don't really have the space, but I think when it comes to a cost ratio, I would prefer spending the extra $3, $4 a month because it frees up all the resources I do have for other projects. So I also host a SIM on my network, and I also have a DNS server hosted. And it gives me the opportunity to kind of still own my media in a sense where I don't have to depend on a streaming service. I don't have to depend on, maybe I don't have the money for a monthly subscription, but I have $3 or $4 extra month, spare. I can kind of free up the amount of resources I do have for other projects. I mean, I would rather that than have it
And
this
when
way.
you say resources used, or meaning like hardware storage?
Yeah, hardware. Like, I
Right.
mean, yeah, physical RAM storage,
Because
hard
RAM,
drive.
you don't really use very much RAM if you just have a bunch of terabytes of storage and you're just accessing one thing at a time.
Yeah, no, it depends because the media for scanning does use a lot of storage, or a lot of RAM, I should say.
Okay.
Like when Jellyfin or Plex is doing their
So you
scans,
mostly want to
detecting it.
outsource
Yeah.
acquisition then?
Say that again.
You mostly want to outsource acquisition then?
Yeah, I want to outsource acquisition. It also kind of takes a lot of the possible legal repercussion off of me because I don't actually have any of that stuff on my machine. And while it is mounted as local storage, it's just mounted as local storage.
Officer, this Coke's not mine. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was in my truck, but it's not mine.
I was also wondering like what your take on security through that was. So it's not my stuff it's being downloaded onto, so I don't really need to worry about it.
Well, for security, that's a little different. I do have, like I said, I have a SIM on my network, so I have an agent monitoring everything. When it comes to that local storage being mounted, that is kind of more a security risk, except the mount, our clone doesn't directly have permissions to do anything on our system, on my system. It's also, it can be containerized to a degree. Like, as a lot of it is SIM linked through Linux, but it's the actual R clone itself is Docker containerized. I do have, like I said, an agent in the container and on the machine. But yeah, that is kind of, I don't necessarily know if it's much more of a security risk than having, I don't know if it's really much more because you would have to then secure the other, like radar and sonar. But a lot of it I'm not necessarily too worried about being insecure because, like I said, our clone doesn't have the permissions to view anything on my machine. So it'd be the same as like having OneDrive on your Windows desktop.
It's a bad example. I hate OneDrive.
I don't like OneDrive either, but this is, in my opinion, a better version of.
So Plex is available as a standalone app where you can watch stuff on demand and live stuff. So how does that come into play with your setup? So for example, if something is already available on there.
I mean, if something's already available on Plex, I would just say then you wouldn't need to download it. Plex doesn't have a lot of media for free. I know it does offer like a certain amount of movies for free, and it does have some live channels on there. But
because you were talking about like detecting certain titles and things, so would it detect it's already on Plex, or you have to do a separate search to see?
Oh no, the way Plex is set up is that your library of things is completely different. Like what Plex provides you for free is considered their library, and you're able to access multiple libraries at the same time. So it just goes, oh, I'm downloading it onto that library, and then there's nothing that it doesn't conflict or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
So how much in gigabytes? Actually, we'll go terabytes. How much in terabytes do you have as far as media goes? This isn't a trap. I'm going.
Yeah. I have and I have, of course,
over 10.
I have 16.
60.
16, I think. It may be up to 20 now. I mean, I'd be willing to obviously go through the stack when you turn the cameras off. I'd be willing to just show like a straight up demo of me going into one of the Sears, downloading something, and we can take a look at how much.
So
I have 16 or something.
By running the hybrid model, that's 20 terabytes that you don't have to have backup for, right?
Correct.
That
Yeah.
you don't have to RAID.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have backup for it. I don't. It's not even on my machine. I don't even have to have 20. I don't have 20 terabytes like sitting around my house or anything that I'd be able to use.
Out of curiosity, would somebody be able to tell me how much it would cost to do striping for 20 terabytes worth of data?
Too much.
Just throwing that out there.
It's about $2,500 because I just built a 60 terabyte.
Yeah.
5-stack.
Yeah. So that's another good reason why running the hybrid model is probably a good idea is with anything, just like with any data that you store at home, if you lose your ass, then A, you're going to be really sad, B, you're going to put it in the guild chat, and C, everybody's going to make fun of you.
Yeah. So that is another thing that I guess I neglected to mention, which is that because their services like Debris Media Manager, they index all the users that use them, their lists. So essentially, if I wanted to, I can get on that app and I can click random hash list, and I'll get a random, out of different users, a hash list of movies and shows that I can just click, copy it, paste it into mine, and instantly have those movies and shows. So, I mean, there's stuff on there that's over 100 terabytes. I know at one moment, I'd have to find the screenshot, but I had around 200 terabytes of movies and shows just added to my hash list that were all mounted through rclone. So there's advantages like that, and it does provide you not necessarily a backup, because if the internet went out and say that service was to get reset somehow, you'd still be kind of out of luck for a little bit. But because you're able to keep your hash list and instantly add it to that kind of service, it makes it so you have some form of a backup if all of your thing was to get deleted for some reason.
I was going to point out is that you live in Florida, and you know that's a good, something that's good. That way you don't have to take that stuff with you when you have to evacuate.
Yeah, that's another part of it, which is that setting this up is relatively quick. You can set all this up super quick. Do it on a Raspberry Pi and take the Raspberry Pi with you wherever you go. I know there is also add-ons for other services. Streamio has an add-on where it streams straight out of Reel to Breed. So you can even negate to set this up if you wanted to do something like that. Of course, again, then you get limited to one user because of Reel to Breed's policies, or at least one IP address. But yeah, so I mean, this is way easier to set up if you need to go somewhere. If your stack just shits the bed for some reason, you have to move it, create a new one. This is a great, easy thing to set up that's pretty quick, and you still get kind of the same results as setting up a full radar sonar stack. Yes?
So with all of these resources, and with Reel to Breed getting to be so cheap, where do they make their money?
That's a great question, because I did a little bit of research into it because I was wondering myself. And what it seems like is it's just like a couple of dudes from France who just own a server farm. That's genuinely what I'm thinking, because I don't exactly know how they make their money. But yeah, it's only €3 per month, which is like I think $4 actually here, $3 and some change. I don't know how they make their money, if I'm being honest. But the service has been around for more than 5 years. I did research. This was around for a long time. Other services like this have popped up. So I'm not exactly sure to answer you, but I think it's just like a small team, like maybe one person who's managing all. I don't actually know.
Access as a service. So with that thing, that's a janitor in a data center.
Yeah, I think it's just so I think it's really small overhead, I guess. I don't know.
No way it's small overhead.
Well, yeah, I guess it's too much storage. Yeah, I have no idea, if I'm being honest.
Power alone.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I have no idea how they make their money. But I know they have been, clearly. They've been around for 5 years. So, I mean, if they weren't making money, they'd probably...
So have we.
They'd probably have shut down.
It's the French Neon Temple.
Yeah.
That's an insult. All right. Anybody have any other questions, comments, manifestos, or concerns for ShortRound before we turn off the stream and, we just talk?
What is ShortRound's opinion on the old school way of doing it, which is getting your torrent from Pirate Bay, putting it on BitTorrent?
Okay, no, we're not doing this right now. No, God, you're the guy who would fucking Google how to make a pipe bomb. You're that guy. God. Okay. So, ShortRound, you have anything for the audience before we kill the stream and nothing happens afterwards?
No, I mean, like I said, after we kill the stream, I'll go up and actually go to, yeah. This is getting uploaded to the Discord. All right. It's getting
Chris, kill the stream before he gets fucking put in prison.
It's time